You've seen this, right? You're walking through London or Bath or maybe Edinburgh. You look up at these gorgeous old buildings and you see a mistake, a window that isn't a window. It's just bricks. Maybe you thought the architect just ran out of glass. Or maybe you thought, hey, that's a weird minimalist design choice. It wasn't a choice. It was a scar. These bricks are the physical evidence of a war the government waged against its own people's lungs. And the craziest part, the guy who helped enforce the system that caused this, it was the same guy who figured out gravity. Today, we are going to find out why the government decided to tax the sun, why you should never trust a cheese broom, and how a shortage of silver coins accidentally killed thousands of people. This isn't just a story about a stupid tax. It's the story of the Great Recoinage of 1696, a financial apocalypse that almost destroyed England. It's a story about Isaac Newton playing detective in the London underworld. And it's the reason why for 150 years, the poor were legally forced to live in the dark. We have a phrase for when we're getting ripped off: daylight robbery. Now the pedants in the comments, I see you typing, are going to say, actually the phrase comes from highwaymen robbing people during the day. And okay, linguistically you might be right, but spiritually, you are dead wrong. Because for 6 generations, the British government literally stole the daylight. But to understand why they did it, we have to go back to 1696. England is at war with France. King William III is on the throne and he has a massive problem. He can't pay his army, not because he doesn't have money, but because the money itself is broken. Back then, coins were made of actual silver, and because they were hand-hammered, they didn't have perfect round edges. This led to a crime called clipping. You'd take a coin, snip a tiny bit of silver off the edge, and pass the coin on for its full value. Then you melt the clippings into a bar of silver and sell it. Free money. Everyone was doing it. By 1696, the average shilling had lost half its weight. Imagine if you went to the store with a $10 bill and the cashier ripped it in half and handed you back the other half as change. That was the English economy. It was collapsing. Foreign bankers refused to take English silver. The soldiers in Flanders were threatening to mutiny. Quick question for you guys. If you could clip 10% off every coin in your pocket and nobody would notice, would you do it? Be honest, I'm not the FBI. Let me know in the comments below. Are you a clipper or a rigid moralist? Okay, back to the crisis. The government needs to fix the money. The Whig junto, basically the cabinet, decides on a Great Recoinage. They are going to recall all the clipped trash and issue brand new machine-milled coins with ridges on the edge that can't be clipped. Great idea, right? Except for one small problem. The government agreed to take back the old clipped coins at their face value. They were effectively buying 50 cents of silver for $1. This created a deficit of nearly £3 million. In 1696, £3 million was, well, it was everything. The country was bankrupt. Montagu needed cash. He couldn't bring back the hearth tax on fireplaces. People hated the hearth tax. They hated the chimney men barging into their living rooms. It was an invasion of privacy. Montagu needed a tax that was non-intrusive. And then he looked at a house, and he saw windows. Now here's where it gets weird. The money from this tax was going to the Royal Mint. And who was running the mint? Isaac Newton. Yes, that Isaac Newton. He wasn't just sitting under apple trees. He was the warden of the mint, hunting counterfeiters in the London underworld. So how did the tax actually work? It was elegant, and it was a trap. The logic was, rich people have big houses. Big houses have lots of windows. Poor people have cottages. Therefore, if you tax windows, you tax the rich. It was the perfect Robin Hood tax. Here's the breakdown. Every house paid a flat 2 shillings. If you had more than 10 windows, you paid an extra 4 shillings. Simple. The window peepers could just walk down the street, count to 10, write a bill, and move on. No entering the house, no invasion of privacy. But here is the first law of economics. People respond to incentives. The tax worked on a notch system. If you installed a 10th window, your tax bill didn't just go up a little, it tripled. So if you're building a house, what do? You build 9 windows, and if you already have 10, you grab some bricks and you delete one. Overnight, thousands of windows across England vanished. Carpenters reported they were hired purely to block up holes in walls. In London Soho, specifically on Compton Street, the Carpenter Society told Parliament that nearly every house on the street had reduced its windows. But of course, the rich found loopholes. The law said that rooms used for husbandry, like making cheese or milk, were exempt. The idea was to help farmers. But the law didn't say the farm had to be in the country. Suddenly, everyone in London became a dairy farmer. People would take a pristine library, paint cheese room above the window, and tell the tax collector, "Oh yes, this is where I keep my cheddar." Surveyors reported finding cheese rooms that were clearly just fancy studies with one lonely wheel of brie sitting on the desk as evidence. The government fought back. They tightened the rules. They said, any hole that lets in light is a window. This led to absolute insanity. In 1845, a Mr. Williams installed perforated zinc plates to ventilate his larder so the meat wouldn't rot. He argued, "This isn't a window, it's a vent." The taxman said, "Does light come in?" "Yes, that's a window. Pay up." The judges sided with the taxman. This ruling effectively illegalized ventilation for the poor. Landlords bricked up the vents. The meat rotted. The air stagnated. And that's when the funny tax story turns into a horror story. We laugh about bricked-up windows today, but in 1845, this wasn't funny. It was lethal. The Industrial Revolution had crammed millions of people into cities. Tenements were crowded, filthy, and damp. Landlords blocked up every single non-essential opening to save on tax. Enter Dr. Southwood Smith. He was a physician at the London Fever Hospital. He testified to Parliament that he visited the fever nests of London. He found entire families living in cellars with no light and no air. Stairwells were pitch black. He called the window tax a tax on air. Diseases like typhus, Irish fever, thrive in stale, dark air. Sunlight is a natural disinfectant. By taxing windows, the government created perfect incubators for disease. In Carlisle, a doctor traced a typhus outbreak to a single tenement house where the landlord had removed every window. 52 people died in that one building. It took years of fighting. The government didn't want to give up the revenue, but the pressure was too much. A guy named Viscount Duncan led the charge in Parliament, shaming the government. Finally, on July 24, 1851, the tax was abolished. Almost immediately, the blind windows were opened up. The glass industry boomed. The phrase daylight robbery became permanently etched into the English language. Even if the dictionary says it came earlier, we all know what it really means. It's a classic example of the law of unintended consequences. Charles Montagu and Isaac Newton wanted to save the currency, a noble goal. To do it, they created a system that deformed architecture, corrupted the legal system, and suffocated the working class. So, the next time you walk past a Georgian house and you see that bricked-up rectangle, don't just think of it as a quirk of history. Think of it as a monument. That is where the sun used to be. If you liked this, check out our video on the salad oil scandal. And tell me in the comments, would you have clipped the coin? Thanks for watching.